I'm joined with by Luis Ayala, who's the president and CEO of La Causa. Luis also takes pride in being a minimal office decorator and having the fewest things in his office, which I have a lot of respect for because you can see my walls are bare.
There you go. We're part of the same tribe, man.
Luis was an amateur boxer for a while in high school and loves baseball. So, Luis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Am I pronouncing that right, Mike?
Yes, you are. Thank you. Everybody's
Excellent.
favorite
Excellent.
word is their name.
That's right. Hey, thanks so much for having me. Certainly appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for coming on. And why don't you give us a little bit of background? We'll go a little bit out of order here and give us the background of La Causa and your
Absolutely.
journey to be there.
Yep. So, La Causa Incorporated, we are a 52-year-old organization, and it is a early education and social services non-for-profit located right here in the heart of Walker's Point. And it was, just to give you a little historical perspective, it was started by three young Hispanic women who saw the need for bilingual early education in the area. At the time, it didn't exist. So they started a daycare center. 52 years later, we've grown from just being early education into what we now have four different divisions. And we have a charter school, K-8, we have early education, we have a crisis nursery respite center, and we have a social services division, which is the only part of the business not in Walker's Point. That's actually in Glendale by the Bayshore shopping area on Ironwood Boulevard. So that's a culmination of our business. Again, 52 years, we're roughly about a $20 million organization funded predominantly through city, state, and county funds and grants. And the county social services part of that would be a revenue building model cycle that we have for our social services.
Wow, cool. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So what was your journey to become the president and CEO?
I'll tell you, so my predecessor, George Torres, he was the captain of the ship for roughly 16 years, an ex-city guy. So he steered this through some financial difficulties and got it to the strong foundational place that it is today. And him and I were close friends. In fact, I was a board member back in the day when I used to be part of Harley Davidson. And so I was a board member for La Causa, so I knew their mission very well. I knew the product, I knew the services. And then an opportunity came up to join the finance department. So I actually worked in my first stint in La Causa. I actually worked here in the finance group. And then I left for a few years. George and I, we maintained communication. We would have lunch. One lunch very much felt like an interview, and indeed it was. And then he asked me, "Hey, what do you think about joining the organization? I'm thinking of retiring. What do you think?" And I said, "Man, I never in my life thought about that. My background and career has been finance. I'm an accountant by trade, so never really thought about an opportunity like this. It fell in my lap, and very appreciative and glad that he did. So since then, I've been in this role for about a year and a half now."
So how what caused you to realize you could do this? I mean, with your background and that you had never thought of it, like what happened to cause you to say, "Yeah, I got this and I can do it"?
But I'll tell you what, as I mentioned, I'm an accountant by trade, and to me, and I may sound a little biased, accounting is a language of business. So you understand the numbers, you understand financial statements, you understand where the numbers are generated, how revenue is generated, how money is spent, and you go a long way to understanding the nuts and the bolts of the business and the organization. So I always felt that I had a strong foundation for business. I always felt confident in that. What I did not feel confident in was not a strong cross-functional experience. So all of my experience was in the numbers games and in finance and accounting and financial statements. So that was good. And although I think that's hugely and critically important, you have to be able to kind of take a step back and analyze problems, not just through the finance lens, but through the human lens, through the HR lens, through the sales and marketing lens. So that was the part that gave me pause a little bit. But because of the foundation I had, because of the different organizations that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of, I thought that this would be a good opportunity for me to feel, quite frankly, Mike, uncomfortable every single day, right? So I said to myself, you know what, if my objective is to feel uncomfortable and stretch my own skill set and gain a new skill set along the way, then this is really the job that can afford me that kind of opportunity. So
Mhm.
for a year and a half, every single day, I've been uncomfortable, man. So mission accomplished.
And how do you feel about being uncomfortable every day now?
I tell you, every day is a learning, right? Every
Yeah.
day is an opportunity. So it's that feeling of uncomfort is really a feeling of drive and an eagerness to want to learn new things and learn more about the business. So,
And growth,
yep, yeah, absolutely,
personal growth, right? Like there's a
absolutely,
thing called the law of the lid that says your organization can't outgrow your willingness to grow.
yeah,
And so
absolutely,
seems like a lot of people want to just get to some spot and say, I got this licked and everything's good, blah, blah, blah. But, life's always teaching lessons. It's either lessons of growth or lessons of the other side. So we might as well take the positive one. So that's cool to hear that.
yeah. No, very well said. I have a good friend, and we both sit on the board of the Vince Lombardi Cancer Foundation, and
Mm,
he is an entrepreneur and business owner who in the sports marketing side of the world. And he told me something very valuable when I started, because him and I would often talk. And he said, well, how are things going? How's it going? And I said, man, I have an extreme case of imposter syndrome, because I sit in some of these meetings, I'm being asked to make
sure.
decisions that you feel either uncomfortable about or unsure about, and you're still trying to figure things out. You're trying to define your own place in this organization. You're trying to redefine the role so it can fit to your skill set. And I said, man, it's imposter syndrome. And he said, you know what? It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show those vulnerabilities, because that shows growth and it shows that you're willing to learn, and you don't have to know everything, right? And that's one of the biggest learnings that I've had in this position is you come into this type of position of leadership, and your inclination is to say, I have to know everything, I have to have an answer for absolutely everything. And you're very shy about showing a vulnerability. You're saying, like, hey, I don't know, well, let me get back to you. And that's one of the biggest learnings that I've had. And it's been a big developmental piece for me to say, hey, I don't know it, right? But my job isn't to know everything. My job is to coordinate. My job is to provide strategic vision and leadership and direction. And you have people in power that are subject matter experts that would do that. And it's your job to sort of lead them and guide them along the way. And it took me a while to figure that out, right? Because you did feel a little bit of an imposter, like, man, what am I doing in this chair if I don't know the details and the ins and outs of program XYZ?
Yeah.
And eventually you realize that's not the gig, man. The gig is to be a leader, and being a leader is can take many different forms and shapes.
Yeah. I was talking to a kid that used to work for me 2 weeks ago, and now he has his own business too. And he's like, I used to think that, he's like, you must have been a great faker. He goes, because I used to think that you had all this stuff figured out. And now I know would have been impossible for you to do so.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I wasn't a faker. I just trusted you. Like I believed in you. And I didn't see any challenges with you solving the types of problems that we put in front of you. So, you should think I was really good at taking advantage of what you could bring to the table.
No, that's
But
very well
business, I
said.
mean, leaders think that, right? Somehow
Yeah.
we have to be smart. And then his
Right.
final thing was, yeah, then I realized you just put your pants on like everybody else. You still got to get up in the morning, walk the dang dog, make coffee for your wife. You're
Yeah. Yeah.
you're just
No,
like the rest
absolutely.
of us. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a huge learning.
Yeah. And sometimes your day is taken up by meetings and booking meetings or scheduling meetings
Yeah.
or putting together presentations. And then you realize that there is extreme value in those things as well, right? In being the coordinator, in being a little bit of the coach of the team, there is a huge value that people look toward that for direction. And
Yeah.
again, sort of being in these positions, sometimes it just takes a while for you to make those kind of realizations, because you're so caught up and sort of, I want to be the man, and I
Yeah.
want everybody to think I know everything, and blah blah blah. And sometimes it just takes a while for you to get comfortable in your own chair, and
Yeah.
that's where I am in that whole evolutionary cycle of becoming this type of leader.
Yeah. I was talking to some people about, coaching what we do, and I'm like, well, you guys are Packer fans. Would you want them to fire their entire coaching staff and tell Jordan Love to figure it out on his own?
Right,
They all
right,
start laughing. I'm like, well, I mean, your business takes care of you. In their cases, and you're leaving it on its own. So
Yeah,
it's hard for us to say I need help or I want help, right?
exactly.
And
Exactly. Yeah.
until it's not, like you said,
So it's not, yeah.
once you spend enough time getting there, you know that that's where your wins are going to come from. And so tell us the
Good.
opposite side. Your biggest, I see your biggest learning is about being vulnerable. What about your biggest challenge over the last couple of years, and someone who helped you get through that?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest challenge, and I'll give you a little bit of context in where I'm going with this. So I talked a little bit about defining the position and sort of bullet pointing what the important things are about this job. And for
Sure.
me, at the end of the day, the most value that I can add to this organization and to the board would be as a fundraiser, right? I mean, this is a not-for-profit with very limited resources. We can't go out and raise the price on a product to make more revenue. We have to either go get a grant or we have to go through the city or to the state and find different avenues and channels for us to get more funding and resources so we can continue providing the services that we do. So at the end of the day, I am sort of the chief fundraising guy, right? You become the face of the organization and you realize that building relationships and building partnerships and working those throughout the city is really the most value that you can add. So for me, the biggest challenge I've had was getting comfortable in that role. And so, as I mentioned before, an accountant by trade, finance my entire life. So that personality lends itself a lot to being extremely introverted. To
Yep.
me, a great day was sitting in front of a spreadsheet for 10 hours and going through formulas, right? I was like, man, this is the best gig in the world and I love it. Now you have to be out there, right? You have to do things like this. You have to do these type of interviews. You have to make these kind of relationships. You have to join different boards and different organizations for you to network. And so the biggest challenge is charging up that social battery, making sure you have enough juice to get through that stuff. And really always representing the organization and the brand. And in situations like that, and just being comfortable in those type of situations. So to me, another, big challenge and big hurdle was how do you become comfortable becoming the face of the organization and doing things like that and sort of tailoring all that to your style and to your personality. And so it's still a learning and it's still a process. I'm still trying to figure stuff out, but that's been a big challenge. The second piece would be we talked about the funding, right?
Yep.
Understanding the funding, understanding where the money comes from and where it goes, and but more importantly, understanding well how can we discover new channels and new avenues to get more funding and increase our resources. We're
Right.
all here to provide a service. We really believe in the mission, but none of that happens if programs are not funded or underfunded. So it is my job then to look and diversify those streams to ensure that we are fully funded so we can continue.
Yeah. I mean, it's especially the nonprofit space. It seems like money becomes a bad word, but like you said, you're a finance person.
Yeah.
You can't have more impact. There's a phrase that says, "In the arena where money works, nothing can substitute for money."
Mm-hmm.
And to have more impact, it just takes more. Like it's
Yeah.
more leverage and more people, and you have to learn how to do that.
No, absolutely. And I think, what one of the challenges is, how do you distinguish yourself from the pack? And right now, it's easy for us because we live in the La Causa bubble to say, man, the services we provide are fantastic. The best services in the world because we directly impact family, we directly impact kids. And these are services that will go a long time for that whole developmental life cycle. But guess what? There's a lot of nonprofits out there who also have a really strong story and they're all fighting for the same buck, right? So,
Right.
how do you become creative? How do you set yourself apart? How do you increase your brand recognition? How do you increase your marketing initiatives? All of these things are now taking me away from what I viewed as my, long life comfort level. And it's not forcing me to have these conversations and think about things that go far beyond just a spreadsheet with numbers on it, right? So we
Sure.
go back again. The theme has been, that challenge lives on, and trying to redefine that to benefit the agency is a big challenge.
Yeah. Well, you've answered like all my questions without me even having to ask most of them. So
I've
I got
talked too
two
much,
more.
man.
I
Wow.
got two more for you. What's the next big thing for you and for La Causa?
Growth,
Next.
growth. I mean, we have to really nail down a growth strategy. I mean, what we have done over the past few years have been maintain the ship and maintain the programs at the level that there are. Part
Yep.
of that is because, the funding sources that we have also been limited in terms of, the capacity of funding that they can do. So to me is finding those new avenues, diversifying away from just one funder. In our case, let's take social services as an example, predominantly the county. So how do we diversify a little bit just so we can be a little safe, right? And
Sure.
then we can increase that pool a little bit. So, if I look at the next 3 years, it would be growth in each one of those divisions. As we talk enrollment for charter school, enrollment for early ed, program growth for social services, and how do we include another bucket of services and another demographic that we can serve. And for crisis nursery, it's, how do we expand that from a 12-bed shelter into, let's say, a 24-bed shelter, right? So the services that we offer can now be much more expansive and encompass a lot more kids and families that we can help in the community. So it
Sure.
is, growth is the name of the game for us for the next, 3 years and for the foreseeable future, really.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a huge mission, so the ability to think through that obviously takes on a whole lot more importance, if you will.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
one last question, Luis, and this is a surprise one that was not on the list. What question do you wish I would have asked you that I didn't, if any?
So do I think that the Brewers within the next 15 years will win the World Series? That is the question for us all, man.
And what's your
So
answer to that?
had you asked me that question, I would say, look, putting my Brewers hat on, I would say I'm super hopeful, but I don't think so, actually.
They
Um,
seem to be prone to selling their best players. I mean, I'm not a big baseball fan, but it seems like every time you really get somebody rolling, they sell them off to somebody else somehow.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I tell you, funny story about where I grew up. So I was born in Puerto Rico, and baseball is religion there. So
Sure.
I grew up a baseball fan. The only way I knew American cities were by the baseball teams because the playoffs and the World Series were aired on Puerto Rican television. So as
Uh,
a kid growing up, my mom walks into the kitchen one day and says, "Hey, we're moving to Milwaukee." And I said, "Wait a minute. That's that team that was just in the World Series in 1982. I'm going to a town where I'm going to enjoy World Series appearances for the rest of my
yeah.
life. I'm still waiting, brother. I'm
No shit.
still
No.
waiting, man."
I'm aware it's the plight of the Brewers fan.
Yeah, yeah. So what's your sport of choice? I see you have a golf shirt on though. Is that your
I'm
thing?
a football fan and a golf participant, hacker.
Got it. You're a Packer backer. Same here. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, good deal, man. Well, thanks
All right,
again, Mike.
Luis. Thanks for the time today. It was great to chat with you, and I look forward to hearing and seeing more things about La Causa.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Mike. You take care.
All right, thank you.